are we looking at in terms of the NHIF Act?
I think there are a lot of changes that I needed my notes to track them all. But in terms of the substantive change, that the H has changed from hospital to health, National Health Insurance Fund. So it's a broader-based fund. It's an all-encompassing. It's like the publicly supported National Insurance Fund, National Health Insurance Fund for Kenya. That's a big change. Two, the Act will build a national database where your data can be accessed from wherever you are in the country. As it has been, you needed to pre-select which hospital you would go to for outpatient and inpatient. And if you are originally in Busia and you had selected hospitals there and you fall sick in Mombasa, you are in trouble, you are not covered, and so on. So now that's going to change that. Two, I'm very happy with the debate inside Parliament on the public policy implications of the changes they are going to make. For example, to say, much as we want to increase the revenue from contributions in order to be able to make the fund self-sustaining, it may leave out others, because that may raise rates to a point where others are left out, like the youth, like the poor, and so on. And to say, therefore, that there will be a system through which the youth and the poor will get some sort of subsidized support for them to belong to the fund. But that in the contributions, there will also be the higher-end contributions that A will buy a little more policy, but will also be backstopping the overall NHIF. I think those are significant outcome, and there are very many more. We have not finished doing the changes.
Okay.
When we finished at 7 yesterday, there's another sitting to be which might come up today. I'm not quite sure when it is on the agenda.
Okay.
Which will complete the amendments. And then we shall see the total act now in a new light on the basis of the amendments made. If, as they go forward, the president has no reservations. If he does agree, then the act will be, I think, a greatly revamped and enhanced act.
Okay. Mwakesi, indulge me on this. As a policy analyst, I'm looking at what the Federation of Kenya Employers had to say about the employers matching the contribution of the employees. They had some reservations. It might push up the wage bill and undermine the capacity of enterprises to create new jobs. So will this push up the cost of labor from where you sit?
When I look at it, and I think I took great exception to that particular recommendation from the Federation of Kenya Employers. I think it's time that we really pull together as a country to really try and ensure as many people fall within universal health coverage as possible. And for me, it was quite progressive to see that employers would be required to really match the contributions that the employees are making. It might have an impact on business, yes, but ideally, one of the things that would be more costly to an enterprise is having a lot of downtimes and having families actually not be able to cater for their medical bills and expenses and take out loans. You know, that strain on its own affects productivity. So if this is one of the elements that will allow, and most employers right now in Kenya do not really provide health insurance for most of their workers. It's not even mandatory for them to do that. So by doing it this way, they can be assured that their employees will be able to access healthcare services should they need it. I think the other thing I probably was very happy about is that there'll be a lot more people coming on board now because of the pricing becoming a bit lower. Of course, this might not really work out, be palatable to a lot of the actuaries who work within the health insurance sector. But one of the things that have really stopped a lot of Kenyans from joining NHIF is the long waiting time. You'd have to wait 6 months from the time you're onboarded till you can be able to utilize NHIF services. Kenyans have always been expecting, at least even if I sign up today, in 2, 3, 4 months I can be able to sign up. But the 6-month waiting period even makes people have reservations about contributing in the first place. So these are some of the conversations that we generally need to have as a country. But on the question of data, I want to just throw in something little as we go ahead with the conversation. One of the things that has really surprised me also with the appointment of Chiloba is that he's a former SBC commissioner, CEO. when we look at the data commissioner, is also Immaculate Kasait, who's from IEBC. When you look at the head of Huduma Center, is James Muhati, who is formerly of the IEBC. So this IEBCization and of persons, especially and people who are holding sensitive data, because you do know the Huduma number literally has a lot of data that concerns Kenyans as per now. So you'd be very cautious. And I remember Chebukati was very clear that one of the hindrances that created a problem, even the Supreme Court mentioned it, is that there was very few polling stations, I think about 11,000, which did not have access to data. So they were not able to transmit results. You can argue that results are actually measured at the polling station. That transmission is literally what creates conflict in this particular country.
True.
So it could be a strategy that you're putting an IBC man to take over CA because he understands the nitty-gritty and the demand that we need to have good data to be able to transmit results.
Yeah.
But it's also something that we need to question. And so I'm one of those people who are a conspiracy-led person who would
I hope you're not an anti-vaxxer.
but I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I say people should get vaccinated,
yes,
but
yes.
it's very odd and precarious when you see the lot of IEBC really holding some of these very sensitive positions 9 months to an election.
Okay.
So we should ask questions.
Yeah. Prof, add your voice to that, and perhaps the National Health Insurance Fund amendments.
Let me start with the sweetest.
Okay.
I think data is the new oil. So if you can control data, you can control a country, you can control people, you can control entities, organizations, and so on. So I think having people from IBC heading strategic institutions that deal with data is not surprising. Probably they understand better what data is all about and its importance. But the question you should be asking is what is behind that selection of those people? As time goes on, it's going to come out more clearer. Back to your question on health. Remember that health is one of the legacies of Uhuru presidency, the Big Four.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we have a healthy nation. A healthy nation is more productive. And as he put it, no employer wants to struggle with the downtime that people are sick, people are unwell, and so on. On the issue of matching the employer's contribution to the employee contribution, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Because a lot of people in this country do not work. And it makes a lot of sense to subsidize those who cannot with those who can. So, and I think in the long run, if employers realize that in the long run they have more productive, more healthy employees, I think they have no problem. On the issue of onboarding the youth and the unemployed, I think that is very important because majority of the Kenyans are youth or young. About 42% of the Kenyans are 14 years and younger. So if we can make sure that those people have health coverage, that they are healthy, then in the long run, the country is going to be more productive. People will be able to work harder.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, the change in act, as Mheshimiwa has put it, is in very good faith, but let's have more debate about it. I am very happy because I'm a journalist and I like words. So replacing health with hospital with health makes a lot of sense. Not in terms of the words, but let's see in terms of the actions.
Okay.
Finally, when I hear that, I remember getting a form from my employer some time ago being told, can you please select some institutions? And I've been asking this question. If I'm in Kware and I fall sick, do I have to come back to Nairobi where my hospital is?
Yeah.
So with the internet, it makes it even easier.
Yeah, sure.
Because if there is that interconnection and I go to a hospital in Kware or Taita Taveta, the doctor can actually see my history. Is it my first ailment? Is it my second ailment? Do I have a history and so on? And maybe we even need to make it even more open so that if I go to a hospital in Germany or New Zealand, they can be able to access my data. Because don't worry whether health is devolved or not. Because if I am in Kisii and I go to Kware and I incur some charges, then they can be transferred between the counties.
Okay.
So I think that's a very good move. And I hope that other big parastatals, big institutions are going to undergo such changes like NHIF so that we get better services, we become more healthier, more productive, and then we feel we are part of this country. Because once we get better services, we feel more patriotic.
Yeah, true.
And we probably will vote better next year.
Interesting. Speaking of voting, Sakwa, the IEBC is set to conduct the voter registration as of next week, I think of the 4th of October. And I'm sure as politicians, usually are, it must be a frenzy in terms of marshalling up the numbers to actually get this voters card. Well, what's your reaction to this? Because I was hearing Kakamega County has approximately 400,000 individuals who haven't picked up the voters card. So what's your reaction to it?
This has become a predictable cycle. I was going to use the word ritual, but maybe ritual is an unfair characterization.
It's very religious.
Yes, but it's a welcome idea to get those who do not have voters cards to acquire voter registration to get registered. But we have a big challenge. IBC is aware. They slackened. They argue that they didn't have the resources, but they slackened in the middle. They should have had continuous registration. So it does not come, with a 30-day rush for everybody to go back and queue to register. This is something they could have been doing continuously.
Continuous, yeah.
And I don't know if they're going to register fresh, everybody, or they're going to register only changes and new entries and change. I don't know which tactic they will take. It's welcome. We in Western, for example, we may use that as an example. I'm sure there may be other regions similar problem. Our biggest problem is not registration as voters. That's very important. Is even to get ID cards.
Okay.
We have a big backlog of ID cards that have not been issued. I'm told that those that are issued have not been entirely picked, but something is not coming out. There's a lack of genuineness and openness about that. When the cards come, they are transported all the way down to the sub-county, and below the sub-county, the chiefs have access to it, the assistant chiefs have access to it, they have frequent meetings. It's not true that you'll have 500,000 cards sitting there and the chiefs are still doing their job every day. There's something that is being exaggerated, that is not coming out right. Secondly, I've seen in my own direct experience in the political cycle since 2007, that when there is a push at a time like this for new registrants to come in to acquire ID cards so that they can register as voters, and by the way, the voter registration is very efficient. Yeah. They can come to a church, to a funeral, to a home, to wherever, to a junction, to wherever there are people. Yeah. So they're a lot more flexible. It's the registration into IDs that's the problem, that those ID cards would normally come in a big bunch just after elections. And that is not something. It has happened in 2007, in 2013, in 2017. I just hope this time that they will do a better job of that. And as you know, IBC has estimated that there is a shortfall among those already registered as ID card holders to voters now. There's 5 million ID card holders that need to be incorporated as voters. So, and they had only done 150,000. That's called failure, in other words.
But have they been enabled budget-wise? I mean, we well know of the issues when it comes to money.
They have argued that they didn't get sufficient resources. Yeah. But even them, as you know, since 2017, they seem to have been destabilized in some way. They've not been thinking about issues of this nature.
Okay.
They've been worrying about a lot more, perhaps other important things, like the quorate issues, quorum and other people that they needed. But they didn't worry enough about. And I'm sure the issues, surprises coming up on equipment and so on. You're going to hear a lot more.
Okay. And perhaps it's time, gentlemen, for a discussion on whether we can have a one-stop shop when it comes to voting. We've talked about Huduma cards, and right now, those who might not have a voter's card but have an ID card won't be allowed to vote. Maybe it's time for the conversation to change. But as we change the conversation as well, I want to take a look at the state of the economy right now, and still, Kenyans are quite sentimental about the price of fuel. And there was a couple of developments just yesterday in Parliament where the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority had a tough time explaining to lawmakers why it did not retain a fuel subsidy in its latest price review, despite reports indicating that at least 22 billion shillings is still available in the Petroleum Development Levy. This went down as the debate continues on who exactly is to blame for the high prices of petroleum, diesel and kerosene. As KTN's Brenda Keruba reports, EPRA now says a revision in taxes is the ultimate solution to the problem at hand. Take a look.
In the latest review, Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority removed subsidies of 7 shillings and 10 cents on petrol, 9 shillings and 90 cents on diesel, and 11 shillings and 36 cents on kerosene. That pushed prices of the commodities to historical highs. The subsidy scheme was supported by funds raised from consumers through the Petroleum Development Levy, which increased from 40 cents to 5 shillings and 40 cents in July last year. EPRA Director General Daniel Kipto says the energy regulator spent 8.6 billion shillings between May 2021 to August 2021 to stabilize the fuel prices.
I think on average, the amount of money that has been collected, considering, and this is information that I've managed to garner from Parliament Budget Office, considering the amount of litres that Kenyans have been able to consume and import into the country, we're looking at about 30 billion shillings. Out of that 30 billion share, it might be important to ask how much of it is what was used. Maybe in your report you might want to include that. How much money of it was used to actually protect Kenyans?
From the month of May to the month of August, the number in terms of how much has been applied for stabilization is a total cumulative of 8,674,683,458.62 shillings.
So we are waiting for the relevant ministry to come in to tell us where the rest of the money is. Because our gut tells us the reason the subsidy was dropped for this month is because the money is finished.
But why was the subsidy removed? A move that led to expensive petrol, diesel and petroleum prices.
Part of the increment of the prices, petroleum product prices, is because of that. That levy is already been exhausted, and you cannot be able to really subsidize the oil prices. What is the future of this petroleum development levy? Do we actually need it?
Don't you think that your existence as EPRA is contributing to the increase in fuel prices in this country?
When there are no erratic prices to be stabilized, where does that money go? And now that it appears you have withdrawn the subsidies, why don't you also withdraw the tax?
Subsidy was removed for fuel prices in the month of September 2021. The Chair and Honourable Members, on that particular matter, I wish to submit that this is a policy matter. This is a matter for policy, and we at the regulator, we are there and we apply the law as is.
Super petrol, diesel and petroleum are subjected to at least 8 other taxes and levies, including excise duty, road maintenance levy, railway development levy and value-added tax. This adds up to 58 shillings and 81 cents for super petrol in the pump price, 46 shillings and 46 cents for diesel and 41 shillings and 14 cents for kerosene. Stark contrast from neighboring East African countries. Consumers in Uganda, for instance, pay 45 shillings and 16 cents in petrol taxes, 35 shillings and 19 cents for diesel, and 9 shillings and 34 cents for kerosene taxes. In Tanzania, fuel consumers pay 43 shillings and 21 cents for petrol, 37 shillings and 26 cents for diesel, and 34 shillings and 74 cents for kerosene taxes.
We import product not only for consumption in Kenya, but also for landlocked countries in the region. So the answer to that question is that they're not cheaper in terms of landed cost. The difference, as we've highlighted here, is the taxation regime in Kenya and in Uganda and our neighboring countries. That really is the difference.
The Departmental Committee on Finance and Planning is set to meet the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Petroleum on Wednesday over the high fuel prices. Brenda Kerubo, KTN News.
So that's what the members of parliament were trying to put the EPRA boss to task to explain where exactly is the fuel subsidy. So we have a member